Welcome to Retro Dive, where we dig up the weirdest, wildest, and most forgotten cartoons of all time. Today, we've got a real alien situation. The early 2000s were stacked with legendary Nickelodeon shows. You had SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Danny Phantom, but then there was this. This is Butt-Ugly Martians, Nickelodeon's attempt at a CGI action show where aliens came to invade Earth, but then decided they'd rather play video games and eat junk food instead. No, seriously. Nickelodeon really thought this was going to be the next big thing. There were toys, video games, even McDonald's Happy Meal promotions, but there was just one problem. So what happened? Why did Butt-Ugly Martians go from Nickelodeon experiment to a forgotten disaster? Let's take a deep dive into one of the strangest cartoons Nickelodeon ever made. Alright, so picture this. You're an alien, you're sent to conquer Earth, but instead of taking over, you just hang out, play video games, and eat junk food. That's literally the entire show. Imagine if the Galactic Empire invaded Earth but got addicted to Fortnite instead. Let's meet our so-called invasion force. First, we've got Bebop, the leader, except he barely leads. Then there's 2T, a tech nerd who's basically holding this entire operation together. And finally, Doo-Wah, who, honestly, I have no idea what he actually does. If these three are Earth's biggest threat, we're probably fine. And of course, no early 2000s show was complete without some bland human side characters. This is Mike, he's just a kid. That's Angela, she exists. And this is Cedric, who has glasses, so he's automatically the smart one. These three were supposed to be the audience's connection to the Martians, but let's be real, no one was watching for them. Now you might be wondering, if these aliens weren't actually invading, why did nobody stop them? Well, meet Emperor Bok. He wants Earth conquered, but the Martians keep lying to him like a kid who says they did their homework. Then there's Dr. Damage, a mad scientist who exists just to be a villain, but somehow has less evil plans than the Martians themselves. And I cannot talk about this show without mentioning the CGI. This was early 2000s computer animations at its, finest. Look at this, it's like someone tried to make Shrek but forgot how faces work. You can feel the uncanny valley. So, believe it or not, Nickelodeon actually thought this was going to be their next big show. Yeah, this. They hyped it up like it was going to be the next SpongeBob. Merch, video games, toys, they went all in. And well, let's just say that plan did not work out. Oh yeah, they pushed merch hard. They had action figures, lunchboxes, even a whole Burger King toy line. But here's the problem, nobody wanted them. These figures sat on store shelves like they had an invisibility cloak. I mean, look at these. This thing looks like it would haunt your room at night. And of course, you weren't a real 2000s cartoon unless you had a terrible video game. Enter Butt-Ugly Martians on PlayStation 2. This game, controlled like a brick with wheels, had zero replay value and somehow looked worse than the show. Critics destroyed it, and anyone who actually bought it probably regrets it to this day. But wait, it gets funnier. Nickelodeon wasn't just pushing this show, they were forcing it down kids' throats. This thing had magazine ads, a whole page on Nick.com, even a Times Square billboard. I mean, imagine walking through New York City just to see this staring down at you. Nightmare fuel. And just like that, Nickelodeon pulled the plug. After just one season, the show was quietly cancelled. The merch flopped, the video game bombed, and by 2003, the Butt-Ugly Martians were gone, never to be spoken of again. Well, until now.
Reality is often disappointing.
Okay, confession time. The Butt-Ugly Martians theme song? Kinda slapped. I mean, was it good? Debatable. Was it catchy? Absolutely. Somehow, Nickelodeon managed to make a song about ugly alien rebels get stuck in our heads over 20 years later. And then there were the characters. These three Martians, Bebop, 2T, and Doo-Wah, were like if someone tried to make the Ninja Turtles but failed miserably. And the villain, Dr. Damage, this guy was supposed to be evil, but he looked like a rejected McDonald's mascot. It was so bad that it was actually memorable. Ah yes, the CGI. Imagine taking Jimmy Neutron and removing half the budget, but that's what the show looked like. The animation was so stiff, it looked like watching a video game cutscene from 1998. But somehow, that weird look made it stand out. It was the kind of ugly you just couldn't forget. Here's the thing, half the people who remember Butt-Ugly Martians aren't even sure it was real. This was one of those shows you watched once, forgot about, and then randomly remembered 15 years later like, wait, was that a dream? And at the end of the day, Butt-Ugly Martians was so bad it somehow became legendary. Maybe it was the theme song, maybe it was the ugly animation, or maybe it was just Nickelodeon's biggest misfire of the early 2000s. Either way, we still remember it. So what happened to Butt-Ugly Martians? Well, it got cancelled after just one season. Nickelodeon pulled the plug fast, and then it just disappeared. No reruns, no DVDs, no revival. It was like Nickelodeon just wanted to erase it from existence. But here's the weird part. The merch outlived the actual show. Nickelodeon pushed these guys hard. There were action figures, books, VHS tapes, even a video game. And somehow, this forgotten show ended up leaving more toys behind than actual episodes. Shockingly, the people behind Butt-Ugly Martians didn't just vanish, they actually went on to work on good cartoons. Writers from the show ended up working on Jimmy Neutron, Kung Fu Panda, and even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So yeah, turns out they knew how to make good cartoons, they just didn't do it here. Could Butt-Ugly Martians ever come back? Honestly, I hope not. But hey, Animaniacs got rebooted, She-Ra got rebooted. If Nickelodeon ever runs out of ideas, who knows? We might wake up one day to Butt-Ugly Martians, the gritty reboot. Let's be honest, the first time you see Butt-Ugly Martians, your brain just goes, wow, that's hideous. And yeah, people hated the way this show looked. Reviews back then were brutal. But was it really as bad as everyone says, or was it just too weird for its time? Believe it or not, there were actually some cool ideas here. The animation? Terrible. But the concept? Kinda interesting. The whole aliens pretending to invade Earth so they don't get in trouble. That's actually a solid idea. Plus, some of the fight scenes were surprisingly decent when the animation wasn't melting. Okay, but let's not pretend this was some underrated masterpiece. The CGI? Straight out of a nightmare. The humour? Painfully cringe. And the action? Looked like it was animated on a calculator. If you were a kid watching this in 2001, you were either confused, fascinated, or running away from your TV.
Chair.
So, was Butt-Ugly Martians the worst show Nickelodeon ever made? Not quite. It had a fun idea, but the execution, disastrous. The best thing about this show, it gave us something to talk about 20 years later. Final verdict, it's like a 2 out of 10, but a 10 out of 10 for unintentional comedy. So, there you have it, Butt-Ugly Martians, a show that's both forgotten and remembered for all the wrong reasons. It's definitely one of those so bad it's good shows that we can't help but look back on with nostalgia and confusion. If you want more deep dives into forgotten shows, weird cartoons, and everything in between, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what's next.